So how do you complete the square? It's actually very easy. Over here, I have 6 examples and we're gonna work through them one by one. So question 1. Now, if you don't know how to complete the square, the quickest and fastest way to do it, for me, is that I separate it into 2 parts. The first part being this part and the second part being this part. So always I deal with the red part first, and I mean this technique always involves dealing with the red part first. So once that is done, we can move on to the blue part. So first things first, to deal with the red part, what you want to do is to write a bracket with an x inside. The next thing you want to do is look at the coefficient of x, the sign of the coefficient of x. In this case, the sign, as you can see, it's positive. So the bracket has to be positive inside of it. And after that, once you're done, what the value is going to be is that you would take 2 and divide it by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. So you would write 1 inside and you would square it outside. So this is always how you complete the square for the first part, for the red bracket. So yeah, once that is done, the next step is to look at the value inside of the bracket itself. In this case, it's positive 1. Now the technique here that I use is that I would multiply this value by -1, but before that we would have to square it first. So what's 1 squared? 1 squared is going to be 1, right? And if you multiply 1 by -1, it's going to be -1. So -1. So once that is done, all you need to do left is just add the value in the blue bracket. In this case, it's positive 4. So add 4. And in turn, what that gives you is x plus 1 squared plus 3. And this is how you complete the square in its simplest, quickest, and fastest way. Okay, example 2. Now you're given a negative in front. Now this method here, as you can see, there's no positive in front. So how do you do with it? Well, we have to remove the negative in front of the x. So what you can do here is to basically, it's really just the same thing actually. It's going to be this part again and this part. We're going to separate it into 2 parts. But now, because there's this in front, we don't want this. So we have to remove that. So we remove it like this. So I'll write it outside. Maybe I'll write it like this. Okay. Before we even go into this step, there is one extra step that we need to do. So we write a negative outside and we write an x squared, because what we're doing right now is that we're not completing the square yet. We're just writing this quadratic in another way by just simplifying the x outside, -1. So this would become this, right? Because if you multiply negative into the equation here, it would be -x squared plus 2x, which is the same as the red colored section that I've highlighted or covered. So you rewrite it like this. So it's still the same equation. They're still equivalent to each other if you multiply -1 inside of the x squared and -2x, right? But now, as you can see, this is in the form of this and this, which is this right here. It's the same thing as question 1. Now, the only thing here that's extra is just a negative, but we don't really have to bother about it. It's going to be the same exact technique. So moving on, now we write back the negative, and it's the same technique again. Write x. Now we look at the sign of the coefficient of x. The sign now is negative, so we write negative. And since the value is 2, we divide 2 by 2, which is 1. Close the bracket, square it. Okay, so moving on, the next step is to square this number and multiply it by -1. So when you square this number, what do you get? 1. Multiply it by -1, what do you get? -1. So it's going to be -1 plus 1, right? The plus 1, this one comes from here, the blue bracket. So once we complete the square, it's going to be this, negative x minus 1 squared. And how do you check your answer? Just open it, right? Negative x squared minus 2x plus 1. Multiply by negative inside of it, then it becomes negative x squared plus 2x minus 1, which is, which is wrong. Hold up. Did I write it correctly? I did, right? Oh. Okay, my bad. All right, so question 2. How do you deal with question 2? We have a negative in front now, and this is a problem because in question 1 there wasn't a negative in front, and this technique will be slightly different. It's almost the same, it's just that now we have to deal with the negative first. So first things first, we rewrite this equation as negative x squared minus 2x plus 1. And it's the same thing because why you would multiply negative inside of here and inside here, which is going to be negative x squared plus 2x, right? So it's pretty much the same equation, just that we took the negative outside. All right, now that's done. We pretty much just do the same thing. It's going to be, we're going to deal with this and this part. Now rewriting the equation, right? It's the same thing again. We have to remember now, it's going to be slightly different. We're going to first write this square bracket and then write a bracket inside, okay, and write x inside. So it's the same technique here from question 1. So it's x squared, now we write x, and now we look at the sign of the coefficient of x. In this case, it's negative, right? Because right here it's negative. So we write negative. And what's the value, the absolute value of the coefficient of x? 2, right? 2. So we would divide 2 by 2 because that's the step that we do. It's always going to be divided by 2. Then you would close the bracket and square it. The next step is to now square -1 and multiply square -1 and then multiply that value by -1. So what's -1 squared? -1 squared is 1. And 1 multiplied by -1 is -1. All right, so that's it. But you would think you would have to add 1 inside and close the bracket, right? No, we actually close the bracket here and write this +1 outside. So it's going to be +1. So the equation, once we multiply this negative inside of here and to this term, basically to these two terms, it's going to be x minus 1 squared plus 1 plus 1, right? Because negative multiplied by x minus 1 squared minus -1, -1 is going to be negative x minus 1 squared plus 1 and plus 1, which is going to be this right here. And if you're not sure whether you're correct, you can always just open it back up. In this case, if we open it back up, it's going to be x squared minus 2x plus 1 plus 2, right? Multiply -1 inside of this whole quadratic, and you get negative x squared plus 2x minus 1 plus 2, which is negative x squared plus 2x plus 1, which is the original equation, as you can see. So that means we completed the square correctly, right? All right. And that's it. That's how you do it. So moving on, question 3. We're given this quadratic now. It's the same technique. What do? In this case, the coefficient of x squared is positive. So what you want to do is just immediately use the same technique as question 1 without using the technique we did in question 2. So again, write an x. This time the sign is negative, so we write negative. This time the value is 4. What's 4 divided by 2? 4 divided by 2 is 2. So write 2. Close the bracket, square it. Okay, that's done. The first step is done. We completed this section. Now we have to complete this section. So what is negative 2 squared multiplied by negative 1? Well, that's negative 4. So we write negative 4 plus 1. And that's it. 2 lines. It's going to be minus 3. Don't believe me? Open back up. So it's going to be x squared. Don't need the bracket. It's going to be x squared minus 4x plus 4 minus 3, which is x squared minus 4x plus 1. And it's the same equation. See? So we are correct. Okay, question 4. All right, now this is new. Our coefficient is not x squared anymore. Our coefficient of x squared is not 1 anymore, or not negative 1. It's a 2. But the idea is actually the same as question 2. All right, this time we take out the 2 instead of taking out the negative. So using the same technique as question 2, we would write 2 outside, like as you can see, like right here. We're not rewriting it this time. Why? Because we're not rewriting the negative outside like this here. We're instead just going to write 2 outside and write it as this. X squared plus 7 over 2, right? Because we can rewrite it like this. And if you multiply 2 inside here and here, what do you get? It's the same equation. You get back 2x squared plus 7x plus 4. All right, we rewrote it, and now it's going to be the same exact technique. So it's 2 outside, close with a bracket, and then write x. So what's 7 over 2 divided by 2? Well, that's 7 over 4. And what's the sign? It's positive. So first of all, we write positive. And 7 over 2 divided by 2 is 7 over 4. So we write 7 over 4. Close the bracket, square it. What's 7 over 4 squared multiplied by negative 1? 7 over 4 squared multiplied by negative 1 is negative 49 over 16, right? Because 7 times 7 is 49, 4 times 4 is 16. So it's negative 49 over 16. Close the bracket, plus 4. Same technique as we did in question 2. It's literally the same. I'm going through with it a little bit quicker because I've already taught it. So now you multiply the 2 inside of these 2 terms, which is going to be 2x plus 7 over 4 squared minus 49 over 8 plus 4, which is going to be x plus 7 over 4 squared. Now, what's this value here? Negative 49 over 8 plus 4. That's going to be negative 8 over 17, right? Yeah, that should be it. I'm not sure, but we can always check our answer. How do you do it? Reopen it. And if we get this, that means we're correct. We need the original equation. So it's going to be x squared plus 7 over 2x plus 49 over 16. Minus 17 over 8. So multiply the 2 inside the bracket. You get 7x plus 49 over 8 minus 17 over 8, which is 2x squared plus 7x plus, what's 49 minus 17? 49 minus 17 is 32. 32 divided by 8, that's, 32 divided by 8, and this is 4, right? So we can just write this as 4, which is the equation right here. So we're correct. then that's how you always use the technique that you use to check your answer. All right, question 5. How do you do this? Same exact technique. We always want to make sure that the coefficient of x squared is positive 1. So since this is a negative 3, we want to remove it to make sure it's positive 1. So take out the negative 3. So negative 3 will be outside, and it'll be x squared. In this case, it would be, so negative 3, what times negative 3 equals to positive 6? Negative 2, right? So we write negative 2 minus 4. I'm not changing the equation. I'm not changing anything yet. I'm just plucking out a negative 3 from our x squared, and so that we can use the technique that I taught. So moving on, same exact technique. Now we write negative 3, square bracket, and then we do this normal bracket and write an x inside. What's the sign? The sign of the coefficient of x is negative, right? So we write negative. What's 2 divided by 2, right? The value of 2. The next we want to write the value, this value right here. So what's the value divided by 2? 2 divided by 2 is 1. All right, we've done that part, so squared. Now what's negative 1 squared multiplied by negative 1? 1. I mean, negative 1, what am I talking about? Negative 1 squared multiplied by negative 1 is going to be negative 1. Now that's done. We close it with a square bracket, and we write this term outside, negative 4. All right, multiply it in. X minus 1 squared plus 3 minus 4. Multiply that in. Add everything up, and you get this. And how do you check your answer? Same thing. You multiply negative 3 inside of this, but first of all, you have to open it up, right? Minus 1, and you get negative 3x squared plus 6x minus 3 minus 1, which is negative 3x squared, blah, blah, plus 6 minus 4, which is this equation. So we did it correctly. We completed the square correctly. Now, this is really useful for your exams. The way to check for your answer is to always just reopen, the square that you completed. Okay, last question number 6. This is a little bit special. So it's the same technique. Since this one is a positive 1, the coefficient of x squared is positive 1, we don't have to do this long technique of taking out a positive 1. So we can straight away just write a bracket, x, so what's the value here? Positive. What's the sign? Positive, right? Then the term here is 2. So we divide 2 by 2, which is 1. Squared, what's 1 squared multiplied by negative 1? Well, negative 1. And then we write plus 1. This term is this, plus 1. So that would be x plus 1 squared. And that's it. So this is special because why there is no, outside of the bracket there is no terms. But don't worry, it's just a plus 0. You can think of it as a plus 0. It might look a little bit weird. But what this means from complete square, if there's no term outside, that means that the stationary point of this quadratic has a y value of 0. And basically, that's it. And so there's nothing to worry about if there's no term outside of the bracket square. And yeah, that's how you complete the square. Really quick, really easy, really simple, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.